Okay, this video is meant to show you how to do Unit 3, Activity 6. The topic or the concept here is called posting. And this is actually a fairly simple exercise. There's a lot of information. It can be kind of time consuming to do the actual exercise, but what it is that you're doing is not all that complicated. So the first thing that you'll see when you download the Excel template from D2L for this assignment is that you have two sheets set up. You've got one titled Journal and the other one titled Ledger. So you're going to be going back and forth between these two sheets and transferring the information from the journal to the ledger. So that's the basic idea. You can read through the content section of this activity to find out what the ledger is and how it's used and why we're doing this. But what I'll do in this video is more so just the activity and showing you how to do it. And then you can figure out what it's all about on your own. All right, so the first thing is we have to look at the journal. And the journal worksheet is going to be where we're getting all of our information for this exercise from. All right. And so you'll see the journal, and this should be familiar to you from the last few activities that we've done and assignments that we've done. You guys are responsible for making the journal entries. So you can see the whole debit and credit setup, and then the line explaining the transaction. So if you'll remember, each one of those represents a transaction on a specific date, and the date's right there on the left-hand side, and then this is the transaction, and then the amounts that were involved in that transaction. So what we're doing here is we're going to take this information and we're just going to put it in our company's ledger. And so that's what this looks like. This is all set up for you. And so we just have to plug in the information as we go along. So as I said, what you'll notice from the journal is there are quite a few transactions. So this will take you a while to transfer over. But as I said, there's not a whole lot of complicated thinking that has to be done while you do that. There are a couple little tricky things along the way that I'll make note of. But I'll do a couple of these. You guys will get the idea, and you can do the rest on your own. All right, so let's go ahead and do our first entry on the ledger. So the way to approach this is to first look at the debit in the first transaction. In that first debit, the account name is what you're going to look for first on the ledger. So in this case, we have rent expense, which is one of the accounts in our company, right? And so we're going to go over to the ledger and we're going to find rent expense. And you'll see on the ledger, each one of our accounts has its own section. So for example, this one is the bank account section. This one is the accounts receivable L. Ingram. Next one is accounts receivable W. McKinney, and so on and so forth. So what we're going to look for first is the rent expenses. Rent expense will be probably toward the bottom, given that it is part of our income statement. So there it is, rent expense. So this is where we're going to record that first bit of the first transaction from our journal. And then the only other thing to note is that each account has a number assigned to it, which I believe you learned in a couple of assignments before, or a couple of activities before. So this is like a quick reference for each of the accounts. So for example, the rent expense account is number 515. And so that'll become kind of important as we go along. All right, so we found the rent expense. And then what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to break this into a different window just so I can look at them without having to click back and forth between the two worksheets. So if you go to view and you hit new window, it'll break out another window for your worksheet. Kind of similar to what you do in the browser when you want to open up a new window in Google Chrome, say, or or Firefox or whatever you're using. All right, so now I've got them side by side, and I can kind of reference one while doing the other, right? So let me open up the journal on that side and the ledger on this side. And get back down to my rent expense. All right, so our rent expense is on October 1st, and it's a debit for $900. So we just need to enter that information in here. So let's see. So it's already got the date as far as the year goes for us. We just have to put in the month and then also the day, at least for the first transaction. And then after that, you can just put the day. So the first one, October 1st. And then for whatever reason, this template does that. It recorrects, or it corrects the date to like 21 for whatever reason. I think it's like putting in the year, October 21. So you can take out whatever formula it is that's doing that. You just have to highlight this whole row, this whole date row. And once you've got it highlighted, you can, let's see, make this bigger. You can basically get rid of what it's doing in those particular cells. So I think the clear rules for selected cells will work. Let's see. Maybe not. So I'm going to highlight those cells again, and I'm going to try one other thing. If it doesn't work, then I'll stop wasting time on the video here, and I'll figure it out on my own time. But in general, okay, so this drop-down menu has to do with formatting. I'm just going to click General, and I think that should clear up the problem we were having. Yeah, there we go. All right, so sorry about that. That was an unexpected bump in the road, but hey, that's how it goes. So we'll put this back side by side. And we've got our date entered, which is obviously the easiest part, right? And then we will put in particulars we don't have to do for now. The next one is PR. This is the cross-referencing. So this is where you find out what page of the journal this particular transaction is coming from. And so the way you find the page number of the journal is you go up to the top right-hand corner, and you're going to see our first page is page 14. And then as you scroll down, you'll see the second page is page 15, and so on. All right, so in that PR, you got to put the page number the journal comes from in case there's any questions about this particular entry. That way somebody can quickly jump back to the journal and know what page to go to find it. So that goes there. And then the other part of cross-referencing is making sure that you put the account number that's associated with whatever account you're working with in the PR column for the journal. So in this instance, we have the rent expense account. Its number is 515. So we're going to put that in the PR column of our journal. So that way we can quickly jump between the two, and we know where each piece of information is entered or saved, however you want to say that. All right, so we've got our PR numbers now. And now we just have to enter our amount for this. So this was a $900 debit. And then if there is nothing else in the account so far, so there's not a balance forwarded, you will just make this amount your balance. All right, so rent expense debit, we've got $900 worth of expenses in the rent expense account. So that's our new balance. All right, so that's the first part of the first transaction. So the next one that we're going to be looking for, if we go back over to our journal, is the HST recoverable. So we're going to find that account here, and then we're going to enter in what we need to enter in. So in order to find that, I just used the Control F function in Excel, meaning the find function. So if you hit Control F or Command F, depending on if you're using a Mac or a PC, it'll open up a little search bar in there, and you can put in whatever account you're looking for. It'll take you directly to it. So I recommend doing that. It saves some time. All right, so HST recoverable, also October 1st, so we can put that in. Now we shouldn't have that problem with the auto formatting. Looks good. All right, and then this is again on page 14 of the journal. So it's J14, J for journal, 14 for the page number. And then this one is also a debit. So that goes there. And then our balance will be 117 because there's nothing in the account yet. So this is our first entry into it. So that'll be the total balance of the account. And then the only other thing we want to do is we want to put in our account number into the PR column here. So we have these two things cross-referenced between the journal and the ledger, excuse me, 251. There we go. So there we go. Always good to make sure you're typing in the right cell, right? All right, and then the third account affected by this first transaction is the bank account. So that one is all the way up at the top. I know that from memory. And that one is a credit for $1,017. So October 1st. And then that is from journal page 14. And it is a a credit for $1,017. And so this one is a little bit different. First of all, there is a balance forwarded in this account, meaning there's already money in this account or money accounted for in this bank account. So we have $2,000 already in here. So our balance can't simply be the new number that we put in there. It's got to affect this number or this balance that was already in there. So this is one of the only times in this assignment where you have to kind of put on your thinking cap and think about the account that you're in, whether it's an asset account, a liability account, an owner's equity account, an expense, revenue, whatever. And then you have to figure out how this amount or this credit is going to affect the overall balance. So since this is the bank account, that makes it an asset account. And we know that in asset accounts, a credit decreases the overall number in that account or decreases the amount in that account. So for this one, this number here is going to subtract from the overall balance. All right, so this is where we are going to use a Excel formula in order to figure out what that is going to be. Obviously, we could simply calculate it on our calculator, but as we go through, you're going to see there's going to be a lot of different transactions added to this account. And so having a formula in place that you can just carry over for the balance is really pretty helpful. So I would recommend doing that. All right, so the way we're going to do it is we're going to tell Excel what number we want in here based on the cells around it and what we want to do with the cells around it. So in this particular example, we want this cell to be whatever this number is plus this cell, which in this case is 0. So really it doesn't matter. And then minus whatever's in this cell. All right, so, and then that'll give us whatever is supposed to be here, the new balance here, which will be 2000 minus 1017. Right. But the reason we do it with all of those cells in mind is because going further down, we might have a debit that we want accounted for in our formula so that we can simply carry it down without thinking about it. But if we don't put in the debit cells or don't make an allowance for the debit cells in our formula, then we have to do a new formula every time we have a credit or a debit. So it's not that efficient and not that helpful if we do it that way. So here's what you put in. The formula bar or whatever it's called up there at the top of the Excel sheet that will give you what you want in this cell and then the remaining cells. So equals, and then we've got to do the first balance. So that cell is G6. And then we're going to add whatever's in the debit column here. In this case, it's nothing, but in other cases, it might be something. So that cell is E8. And forgive me, I made a mistake there. It's G7, not G6. Okay, so we've got the original cell of the original balance plus whatever's in the debit column, and then minus or subtract whatever's in the credit column. So that one will be F8. And so if we did this right and we hit enter, it should give us our new balance based on that formula. And then, as I said, as we add things to the bank account, we can just carry that formula along and it'll auto calculate for us this balance. So it's a little work at the front end, but it's helpful because you don't have to do every single calculation as you're going through from then on. So let's see how it went. Good. 983, that's the exact amount we should have. That's 2000 minus $1,017. So you can do that for each one of these accounts, and you can put in that formula or that style of formula. The only time that you have to be careful about that is if it's a different kind of account. So this was an asset account. So in that one, we had the first balance plus whatever's in the debit minus whatever's in the credit. In a liability account, that would be the opposite. So we'd have the balance minus whatever's in the debit account plus whatever's in the credit account, just because debits and credits flip what they do or what they mean between the asset account and the liability account. All right, so that's kind of the one thing that you have to be careful of as you're going through, and you have to be kind of aware of as you're going through that you don't put in the wrong formula for the wrong type of account. All right, so that is our first transaction. I believe we got everything in there, right? Got the rent expense, the HST recoverable, the bank, and the only thing I forgot to do was add the account number for the bank account on the journal. So that's 101. We've got that in there. Right. So that's pretty much all there is to it. The only thing I will show you is if you how to make your balance formula carry through or work for multiple entries. So I'm going to put some nonsense numbers in here in this column or these columns just to show you how this works from here on out. So I'm going to put $500 in the debit, $600 in the credit, $1,000 in the credit, another 200 in the debit, another 300 in the debit, or 3,000. I'll put 900 in the credit, and then let's put another 700, say. All right. So in order to get this formula to do our calculations for us, all you have to do is click on the last cell that we worked in, the one that we made the formula for, and then take your cursor over the cell. And when it becomes that black plus sign or that black cross, you can click and drag all the way down to your last entry and then let go. And it will do your calculations for you based on that formula that we put in. Right? So that number should be correct and should account for all these different transactions that we put in. You'll see at one point we went into the negative balance, presumably because we credited too much to this account or took too much out of the bank account. But then it went positive again once we put more in, right? We had more debits. So that's possible, that can happen, and that's okay. Obviously for your business, you don't want it to go in the red. So it's good that you have the running balance to know kind of where you're at. It's the whole point of accounting, right? So that's how you do that. Remember, these are nonsense numbers. These aren't from our actual assignment. So you can delete these. Right. So that is basically it. Obviously, if you have questions as you go along or you need help with anything on this, the Excel formula, how to apply the Excel formula, when to flip the formula based on the accounts, those sorts of things, just send me a message in Edsby and we can talk about it. Or if you need to, we can talk about it in class too. All right, guys, good luck with it. And thanks for watching.